I guess we're on. Good morning. So, I was actually, I didn't sleep very well last night, so I was lying there thinking about different things. And one of the things that I thought about is, oh, I have to turn up. Just a second. There we go. So, when I was in school, we had French in Montreal. Montreal in those days was very much a divided city. You had 1 million English speakers and 2 million French speakers, and they kind of stuck to themselves. It was known as the Two Solitudes, which is not the case today. If you go to Montreal, downtown Montreal, if you're in, you're go out for breakfast or you're meeting with people, a lot of the time you don't know if it's an Anglophone speaking French or a Francophone speaking English. Montreal has become a genuinely bilingual city, at least in the downtown area. I don't know. There are probably, if you go out to the West Island, you'll meet people who only speak English. And if you go to other parts of Montreal, you'll meet people who only speak French. But overwhelmingly, in the area that I go to, I get this impression of a very vibrant bilingual city. But there I was in school, and we did French, and French was just a subject like trigonometry. We had no particular interest in it. We did what we had to do to pass. And now, today, I'm learning my 19th and 20th language. Now, I want to be careful. I have learned languages that I can't operate in right now, like Greek or Romanian, but they're there. They're there somewhere. They're there in LingQ, content that I've used, words that I've learned, and I can revive them. If I were going off to Romania, it wouldn't take me long to get up to a level. Same with the Greek, Polish, whatever. So what has changed? What has changed in my mind is that, it is now, to my mind, it's become normal to speak many languages. And in fact, I have to confess, not confess, but recollect that when I started these videos back, 10 or so years ago, and when I wrote my book, which described how in the course of my professional career, I had learned 9 languages. I was 60 at the time. I had learned 9 languages for a variety of reasons related to my work, to my travels, to my interests, but I had learned 9 languages. I'm now approaching 20. And at that time, the book was called The Way of the Linguist, because if you look up an English dictionary, and this gets some people upset, but the #1 definition of the word linguist in an English language dictionary, I don't care whether it's Oxford or Merriam-Webster or what it is going to be someone who speaks many languages. So that historically, in English, the word linguist has meant someone who's adept at languages, who speaks many languages. He speaks languages like a violinist plays the violin, a pianist plays the piano, a linguist speaks languages well. But there always was this other word. First of all, there was this other definition of linguist as someone who studies linguistics, and that's a much more recent meaning for that term, because linguistics is a relatively recent field of study. But there's also another term for someone who speaks many languages, and that is polyglot, which comes from the Greek many tongues. And I would say that certainly 10 years ago, and maybe even today, outside of our area of people who like languages, a lot of the English speakers don't even know what the word polyglot means. The word polyglot is much more common in other languages, where the word linguist is not used to mean someone who speaks many languages, where the word polyglot is used. That's true in French, in Spanish, in Russian, and so forth. But I am now more and more prone to use the word polyglot rather than the word linguist, because even in my mind, linguist is someone who speaks 3 or 4 languages. It's an arbitrary, it's the way I take it. But when you hear the word polyglot, you think of 5 or 6 or more languages. That's the way I interpret it. Now, some other people may have other terms. There's also this term hyperglot or hyperpolyglot, which I don't like at all. I think you're either bilingual or multilingual or a polyglot or whatever. And never has it become easier or more nothing to speak many languages. because even compared to 10, 12 years ago, let alone when I was back in school, it's just so much easier. And I think we should celebrate this, celebrate the idea that, first of all, in school, they should teach many languages. They should teach many languages with the goal of teaching comprehension, not with the goal of testing people on whether they can get the subjunctive right, or whether they can get this or that fine part of grammar right, but rather expose people to a lot of languages from different language families, expose them to these languages so that they can at least get some comprehension, some taste of these languages, and that might then induce them to learn the language later on. And you sometimes hear people say, well, in the future, we won't need to learn languages because we can rely on some form of artificial intelligence or something. And I don't believe that at all. I think the other is true, that all of the advances in technology, which I've mentioned before and I might mention again today, make it easier to learn languages. So that, you know, if I'm sitting in a plane, as I was the case flying from Iguazu to Rio, and the gentleman beside me is Paraguayan, but actually of Ukrainian origin, and we speak in Ukrainian, I wouldn't do that through my iPhone, where I would speak into the iPhone and out comes a translation and he can listen to it and we pass it back and forth. We would not have that conversation. We'd say hello and go back to reading or whatever we were doing. I'm learning my Persian right now, and I'm genuine. You know, there are times when you get this sense that you're making progress. And I'm making progress in my Persian, and I'm reviewing. Right now, I'm doing the Assimil lessons that I imported into LingQ, where I took the audio, which I got with the book that I bought, and then I put it on the Vocalmatic, example of technology, which transcribed the whole thing for me, minus punctuation, which is unfortunate. They do offer punctuation for English transcriptions, but not for Farsi. If I feel like it, I could go in there and put in the punctuation, but I haven't done so. But at least I'm listening and I'm going through the lessons, and I also have the book. And so here again, I'm multi-platform. I'm doing it in the book, paper, and I'm also doing it on LingQ and listening and stuff. And I really feel I'm making progress. And when I go back to Vancouver, where there's lots of Persian speakers in North Vancouver, West Vancouver, I will use it on salespeople and other people that I come across. I wouldn't do that with my iPhone and say, look at me, I can speak into my iPhone in English and out comes Persian. The shopkeeper would tell me to go away. Whereas if I come in, I even have a barber who's Persian. So I can be sitting in the barber chair and speaking to her in Persian. I wouldn't do that with my iPhone. Which reminds me, by the way, I had my hair cut, and so I went to the local barber here, and he had his AirPods in his ear while cutting my hair. So I said, can I put my AirPods in my ear while you cut my hair? He said, fine. So I was able to listen to Persian while he was cutting my hair. And he was very careful when he cut around my ears that he didn't dislodge the AirPod. So with all of that, I think we should have more recognition of this idea that we can all be polyglots, we can all learn many languages. You know, with the amount of travel that goes on, the internet, accessing interesting content, the, you know, online dictionaries, text-to-speech, automatic transcription, LingQ, other, you know, facilities that are out there, language exchange websites and stuff. Everybody can learn 3 or 4 or 5 languages. And I get extremely annoyed with people who always say, well, you obviously have a talent, you know, like the number of people who say, yeah, I was never any good at languages. Yeah, I have no talent for languages. Yeah, I can't learn languages. You're lucky you have a talent for languages. I don't believe that, not for a second, because if you go to countries like, say, Sweden or Singapore, everybody speaks at least 2 languages. And don't tell me that everyone in North America has no talent for language, or that the majority of people in North America have no talent for languages, and that the majority of people in Sweden or Singapore or Ethiopia have some kind of gene that makes them better at learning languages. I don't believe that for a second. You just have to do it. You just have to spend the time. And of course, a lot of the traditional methods of instruction where they Try to teach your grammar up front when you have no sense of the language, no previous experience with the language, and you get all these explanations that are meaningless, and then you have to be worried about getting them wrong on the exam and stuff, and they may not click in until 2 or 3 or 5 years later. So I think part of it is how they're taught, and it seems to instill in people this sense that, you know, unless you have some special talent, you can't learn languages. I don't believe that. I believe that everyone has the potential to be a polyglot. I think being a polyglot is a wonderful thing. You can go and connect with all these different cultures. I'm not going to go so far as to say that it would eliminate a lot of the nonsense that happens in the world. I don't think it would, but it certainly broadens one's perspective to have more than one language, and possibly more than 2 languages, 3 or 4 languages. It makes you aware of worlds outside your own little narrow world. And so we should have an International Day of Polyglots, or I don't even like the word polyglottery. International Polyglot Day. We should have that. I don't know when. Today is whatever it is, March 20, what is it today? Anyway, the 22nd? Maybe March 22nd is pretty close to the beginning of spring. Nowruz, as it is in Iran. So that's really all I wanted to say, and I will now have a look at whatever questions might have arrived. So I found a really funny mistake typing one of LingQ's Turkish mini stories. You should email it in. Yes, please do. I mean, we rely on people. I can't speak Turkish, and we need people to tell us if there are errors. We're very happy to correct them. We would go back to the person who did the mini story, because sometimes people, at any rate, please let us know. Thank you. What is your advice for traveling? I'd love to go from where I live to Europe, but obviously the cost is a turnout. What is my advice? I mean, you look for deals. I mean, you're not going to go by boat, so you have to fly. So you look for deals. All kinds of airlines offer deals. And then there are people who travel cheaply, couch surfing, and you have to get on the internet and connect with communities of people who travel and who don't have and don't want to spend a lot of money. Oh, Alpine Link, you can correct it. Okay, no. If someone is a native speaker in a language, we can give them an edit pencil. Not everyone has it, because we can't just have people at random changing our lessons. But if we can choose to make someone an editor, and they then can go in and make the changes themselves. That's for Alpine Link. Did you see the tree? Okay. Hey, what's fresh? So this is again this business of editing a lesson. Okay. Oh, you don't have premium. What can be asserted without evidence can also be dismissed without evidence. Can you learn Chinese in 1 year with hard work? Yes, I did it. Okay. If I'm going to go back to the languages that I haven't, studied for a long time, if something takes me there, so I'm going to be visiting Ukraine, I'll sort of freshen up my Russian and Ukrainian. I like Italian, German, all these languages, and if I happen to come across an article, I'll read it in that language, but I won't be making any special effort to sort of raise the level. Okay, Tim Donor, I believe I've seen him. I think he's an outstanding polyglot. I don't remember that well. Do you think people are given a talent to learn languages faster, have an easier time? I mean, it's like anything. Some people might be better in some aspects of learning a language than others. Some might learn it faster, some slower. Some might pronounce better. But these are not significant differences. We can all learn. Then Brazil, I love your videos today. I'm learning Mandarin. Thanks a lot. Good luck to you. I have recently become interested in learning Arabic sometime in the future for business purposes. Would it be most smart to learn MSA or regional dialect? What dialect do people in the UAE use? If you have a particular business reason for learning Arabic and it involves dealing with people in the United Arab Emirates, then I would learn their regional dialect. My interest in Arabic is more, I want to be able to read newspapers, I want to understand podcasts, I want to have a sort of a base in the language that would enable me then, if at some point I was going to be spending a lot of time in Lebanon or Morocco or Egypt, then I could go and focus in on that language. Yeah, I appreciate, yes, if we give up learning languages because of machines, then we can give up sports, right? No, I don't know any free platform where I can chat with native Japanese, but again, you just have to Google. Oh, it's good, man. The panda likes my haircut. Thank you. Every so often I have to cut my hair. It takes a lot of time to learn language, to make more time for young people to actually learn them in school. What do you mean? See, this is a question of actually learn them. I think we need to expose them to them, give them interesting things to listen to and read, and movies and videos, and point out how some of these languages work without forcing them to perform on tests. And so if by actually learn them in school, you mean that get them to speak them properly in school, I don't necessarily agree that that's where the emphasis should be. What are your opinions on Mr. Clugson's rants about you? This is a guy who's located somewhere in Thailand and constantly rants, calls me, I don't know, a fake and all kinds of stuff. I think he is has some psychological problems. Dear Steve, what is your opinion? Okay, I'm 50, is too old. I'm 53, is that too old to learn new and several languages? Says Cashew Paul. Well, I'm 73, and since the age of 60, I have learned 9 languages. So I don't think you're too old. We now know, science knows that our brains, our neurons remain plastic. We just have to activate them. We have to do something, give them work to do, and they will respond. Why do you think some people get offended when you speak their language? I've never had that reaction. Haven't had people get offended. Yeah, you have to be careful. Like if someone say, and I'm guilty of this sometimes, like here in Palm Springs, you can see people whose name is Jorge or Pedro, and he even speaks with a bit of a Spanish accent, and he's originally from Mexico. He doesn't necessarily want me to speak to him in Spanish. He's here, he's an American now, he's speaking English, he's working in English, he wants to speak English. So he doesn't want you to say, oh, you're a Mexican, I can speak Spanish. And similarly, sometimes in Vancouver, if you have a waiter in a restaurant and they're obviously Chinese, but if you speak to them in Chinese, they may come back in English because, you know, what, you think my English is no good? So those are the kinds of things. Other than that, I haven't seen people become, you know, get offended if you speak their language. I'm going full-time with learning Chinese. Do you have any tips for not burning out? Just keep it varied. Just keep it varied. Okay, what do you think it was that transformed Montreal into a bilingual area? It was the coming to power of a nationalist government, a Quebecois government that said, you know, we want to be masters in our own house. Because up until 1960, you know, the English speakers controlled the economy. The English speakers had all the good jobs. Education was controlled by the Catholic Church, and the liberals at that time, they came to power and they said, we're going to change that. We're going to have a minister of education. We're going to get the church out of not out of education, but we're going to take over the primary responsibility for education. We're going to make sure that we don't just educate, you know, lawyers and accountants and notaries and priests. We're going to educate engineers and business people. And we're going to have some rather, in many sense, unfair language laws that we're going to force people to have signs in French, because you were in this town, Montreal, and you were hardly aware that it was a French town. So many of those laws were a bit unfair, but the net result was, I think, positive, although it caused a lot of English-speaking Montrealers to leave, or English-speaking Quebecers to leave Quebec. So there was an economic cost to it. But they did essentially establish the primary position of French in Montreal. So an English speaker in Montreal needs to have French in order to work there. So it became a necessity. So French became important. I'm doing fine. Not sure how. Wait a second. Can a Russian native speaker learn German in 1 year up to B2? I think so. I mean, it's all a matter of how you go about it and how much time you put in every day. I mean, if I learn Chinese up to B2 in 1 year, but full time, despite the difficulty of learning Chinese characters, definitely a Russian native speaker can learn German. But lots of listening and reading, lots of listening and reading. Don't get hung up on, nailing down the grammar. The grammar will gradually come to it. You can review it from time to time, but it'll all fall into place if you give yourself enough exposure to the language. And when you speak, just talk. Don't second guess yourself. Don't worry about how you sound. Just go for it. Okay, I said that speak well, you need to speak a lot. How far can you get with speaking to yourself? I have never been big on speaking to myself. Some people do it. Try it. I mean, obviously, it's a form of output, but I think it's better to find people to talk to. Hi, Steve. Do you watch Netflix using audio description for the blind? I haven't done that. It's something to do. I'll look into that, but I don't spend a lot of time in front of the television, so I really can't comment. Okay, here, I can't match my links. What is the best way of reviewing links? Okay, I don't try to review all my links. I have far too many of them. I review them typically as I turn the page or move on to a new lesson. I don't expect to remember anything. I don't try to memorize them. I don't spend a lot of time on review. It's just another form of exposure. It's sort of a concentrated exposure of words and phrases, say in a lesson that you are having trouble with, but don't hang on to it. Leave it. Just do it a little bit. Don't worry about how much it helped you, and just move on. Salute da Vicenza. Ciao Steve, come stai? Bene, grazie. E lei? E tu? Hello, I'm currently learning 2 languages simultaneously, German and Japanese. Is it a good idea to do so? It can be, if that's what you like doing. My experience with Farsi or at least Persian and Arabic is, it's an interesting experience. I would be further along in each one of them if I were working on them, if I were concentrating. But this way, I'm able to do a little bit in each. It keeps things fresh, but there's a certain period of catching up again. Like I had a discussion with my Persian tutor on a Wednesday, having done nothing but Arabic for 4 days, and I was really struggling. So I think you have to experiment, but it's not impossible. It depends how you study and what you like to do. Have you ever considered learning Vietnamese? Well, I was in Vietnam for a week. So I tried to learn up some Vietnamese before going there. I got a phrase book. I bought some books. I listened. I basically was unable to do anything. The only word I came away with from Vietnam was "come on," which I think is, I can't remember now. Thank you. But it sounds like "come on." So it takes a lot of work, but I can't imagine that Vietnamese would be more difficult than Chinese. In fact, should be easier because you don't have to learn characters. How many hours a day do you devote to language learning? Well, I think I get in an hour of listening and probably another hour, 45 minutes of reading and linking. Is it possible to become fluent or at least achieve B2 in a language just by listening and not reading? Well, if you just listen, I find I can't understand a thing. So I have to read in order to see what the words were. I would say no. I would say no. Yeah. How do you know what the words are? Unless somebody explains them to you. I am using LingQ to learn Slovak, reading a lot, as it's similar to Czech, which you speak. What, in your opinion, is the best way to ever get to fluency with so many suffixes to learn? Well, I mean, it's, you know, I think that I like the many stories. We have them in Slovak. If you once you get to that, you know, through the many stories, you can go and buy an ebook and an audiobook and work with that. And it's just a lot of exposure. And don't focus so much on specific grammatical issues like suffixes. They'll eventually seem clearer to you. A lot of the stuff that seems so very difficult and, insurmountable at first becomes easy with time. Sandy Moonstone, teacher, I see you can't read Mandarin. Now, I do read Mandarin. What would be the reason for that? Did Sandy Moonstone send me a message in Mandarin? Anyway, I'm not going to bother with that. Have you ever considered planning to move to Montreal after college? I'm hoping my French from school improves rapidly once I get speaking to Quebecers. So far, I've been practicing a Quebecois accent in French. Yeah, I mean, we'll learn the accent that's most useful for us. Okay. Okay, mastering cases in Russian. It's one of these things that in time you get better habits at. Obviously, when we are reading or listening, not knowing the cases is less of a problem because we can tell the meaning from the context in most cases, not always. But so that listening and reading helps us get a grasp on the cases. But what I do is, occasionally consult with the many explanations and exceptions, etc., that govern the use of cases. I save phrases in LingQ that have these cases. I remember when I was doing it, I would tag them, so I would review, just the certain case. Sometimes if I have a book where they have a lot of questions that are asking for a certain case, then I'll look at the answers at the back of the book. You need some sort of concentrated exposure to them so that you develop the right habits so that when you speak, you can use them correctly. When I get to Ukraine, I will be using them incorrectly, and slowly, through a lot of exposure, I will get a little bit better, but I won't get 100%. How can you make being a polyglot your source of income? I'm not aware of how you can. Korean, yeah, I mean, I worked at it for a while, and it's a language that I feel I'm on the sort of threshold of being able to speak well, but I'm not there yet. So I'm probably somewhere between B1 and on that long road between B1 and B2. How did you fall in love with learning languages? Well, it's just fun. It's just fun. It's fun. I guess two things. One is it's the fun of discovering something new and everything that comes with the language. And the second thing is that once you realize that you can do it, then you want to do more of it. Greetings from Latvia. I want to learn several languages. Know my native language learned at school, Russian and English, starting on my own Mandarin. Rosary Rose. Latvia, I visited Riga. I really enjoyed it. Great town, nice little park in the middle of town and all of that. Good luck to you and your Mandarin. Andy Moon said, okay, so what do you want me to do with that? Does LingQ have any Polish tutors, or should I just search on the internet? I don't think we do. It's a bit of a chicken and egg situation. I would go to italki. There's some excellent tutors there. Evalina is one that I used, who's very good. Vad tycker du att föredra? Att kunna många språk lite? What do you think is better to be sort of poor in many languages or master a few? It doesn't matter. It's up to each individual. If I'm Before, I certainly didn't master Romanian or Greek. I got very interested in wanting to discover Arabic and then Persian. I go where the mood takes me. I look like his grandfather. How to get more? How to get more vocabulary? Use LingQ. It's an ideal tool for that. How much time do you spend finding compelling content? It's an issue, and I think at LingQ we got to do a better job of presenting people with the content and making it easier for people to find stuff of interest to them. B1 to the B2 is a long road. Do you approach different topics in different languages? Would you read, for example, news about Chinese-US relations in both languages, look for a perspective in a neutral country's language? Well, I wouldn't read specifically about Chinese-US relations, for example. I might be interested in history, or I might be interested in following the news. So any news item could be about any subject. And I mean, necessarily if you're in a certain language, like if I'm doing my Arabic and I'm trying to follow events at podcasts at France 24 or Al Jazeera, it's going to tend to be more about the Middle East. And it's interesting to get a Middle Eastern perspective on events in the Middle East, which we normally just hear about through our own media. What is your opinion on switching to only barely comprehensible input when there's a lack of intermediate content and the beginner content becomes too easy? I deal with that all the time. I'm struggling with that in Arabic, and I sort of switch back and forth from sort of the easier content, which might be Asimil, or in Persian, because the Arabic Asimil is not very good, or my mini stories, and then fighting through these podcasts, gradually gaining more vocabulary. And after a while, I find it too tiring and I go back to the easy. You kind of have to mix the two. What do you think of Dashan? Okay, I think I've seen a video of him. I don't know much about him, but I do know that he is very, very fluent in Mandarin Chinese. He's a Canadian who's lived in China for quite a while, and he's a comedian on television. And it's sort of confirmation amongst the many, many other people that you can learn a language to a very high level as an adult. Azerbaijan, another place I'd like to visit. Steve, please turn on subtitles in your live speed so I can follow in Spanish or whatever and practice at the same time. I don't understand. I don't know that I'm the one who does that. I'll look into it. Okay. Live stream. Hello, sir. I'm a really big fan. Okay, thank you. Now, 英文有没有中文的文章？怎么找不出？有没有联系中文的文章？ I mean, we have, I'm not sure what this person is looking for here. We have Chinese material at LingQ. I think we have Cantonese, Mandarin in simplified, and Mandarin in traditional characters. So please look again. Do you think Asimil is a good language learning resource? You know, it's a starter book like any other. It progresses very quickly. In some languages, the content was interesting and good. Russian was a good one. The Persian is a good one. In some, it gets to be, they're trying to be too cute sometimes with their stories. Persian, they give you a glossary, like the words, which in some of their languages, they don't. They just give you the translation, which I don't like. I find a lot of their explanatory notes are just a distraction. I don't even look at them. So to me, there's nothing special. Okay, I'm going to call it here, and thank you. A little shorter today, and we'll see if the United Nations establishes a World Polyglot Day. Bye for now.